Art is a mechanism for me to discover who I am. So when you see those very bright, colourful, energetic, sort of disciplined paintings, it's probably about me arriving at a point where I can ascertain a certain strength or definition.
Always, I think the theme that underlies everything is place, landscape, and all the things that involves light, the change of seasons.
Everything that you see in terms of a painting is really just me trying to find more about me, not being objective, but probably truly trying to be subjective, but using mechanisms that are external to try and tell me where I am or who I am.
Her father was working on the Warragamba Dam. A lot of her early childhood was involved with that project. So she's very interested in kind of building and boys' stuff, as she says, mechanics.
And because it was all dams and bulldozers and trucks and things like that, there was clay everywhere because they dig it all up. So I'd come back to our place with clay, you know, a handful of clay, and I'd make things out of it.
That was the start of this wonderful love of the Australian landscape, and that really comes from her early childhood, and that is constant in her work. I mean, all her work, I think, is about place.
For some reason or other, painting is the medium I chose. It could have been gardening, it could have been sculpture, ceramics, other forms of expressive delineation, or whatever the word is, but it just happened to be on canvas, and we call it painting.
She works in various ways, so she does use varieties of collage techniques. It's all analogue. She doesn't do any digital manipulation. She doesn't have a computer. She's a really quite old-fashioned artist. And I've often said to her, you know, if you got a computer and put these all on a computer screen, you could manipulate this all. But she said, no, it will be entirely different work.
It says 2000, so because of the dates, it tells us then that this is probably almost the beginning of the Three Pond series. So what we have here is drawing and script on tissue paper. So these are actually got a collage surface. You've got the canvas underneath, you've got 3 or 4 layers of gesso and sealing medium, and then working on tissue paper and putting that down to follow, say, things like the contours, which is in the topographical material, the reference material. You can start to get shapes, and these shapes will just emerge out of the journey.
She has these distinct phases in her life, you know, the early phase with art school, and then going to the UK, and then coming back, travelling around Australia. And then she really wanted a property in an area that she was familiar with. And so Three Ponds began when she bought a property in Oberon.
Initially it started off as a pursuit of lifestyle, you know, because I had no idea whether I'd be able to make paintings when I got here, but I was still drawn back to the country. So being drawn back to the country meant that I could, with a partner, hopefully, share what I thought was a terrific way of life. So we spent 6 or 8 months looking for a suitable block of land, ultimately finding what became Three Ponds as a site or a location, and going on from there, developing ideas. Of course, we've got the snow and the winter and the frost and the rain and the floods. So it really gave me this enormous range of opportunity to explore all these different things that I could ultimately somehow weave into painting. I moved from the very topographical paintings to the paintings we call the Three Ponds series. These are the Three Ponds paintings which are being shown at the Bathurst Regional Art Gallery now. Their composition derives from the location, being the Three Ponds. Pursuing the seasons was always interesting to me as much as the colour itself. So the colours derive from either the colour of the dams or the sky with the blues, and the reds might have come from the maples or the trees that I'd planted that were starting to show colour in autumn and winter.
One of the great connections I have with her is she's an archivist, and at heart she archives her lived experience, but she also archives the lived experience of the landscape. And you know how that comes into her work, like in Three Ponds. You get all these layers in the work, She often works from a photograph, which might be a topographical photograph or an aerial photograph as well. So she looks at the place from various heights and various perspectives. She'll then look at her diary, and she often photocopies her diary to see what was happening on that day, the change of the seasons.
This is giving me resource ultimately to make paintings. If you go through there and you look at things like temperatures, it's -6 to +17°C, and it says rain or snow, and it's just got a tick. This is collage material, and this material just for me is like an interesting form of jumble. It's a form of like blackberries, or it can be a form of just mess. Chaos. Chaos would be the right word. So you can go from quite open and controlled or passive areas to chaotic areas. So this is why, as a painting, what's happening is really this push and pull between chaos and what might be considered a calming.
The pond is a perfect symbol of what she does in her art. So you have that two-dimensional surface that you initially see in her paintings, and then you look at the surface of the pond and you realise there's so much happening underneath. There's fish, or there's the reflection of the sky, or the trees that are around the pond. And I think that's one of the wonderful things about that series of works. They're quite beautiful on the two-dimensional flat thing as paintings, but they have all these other layers beneath the surface of the pond that draw you in and make them interesting artworks. Once I asked her, for an artist that's so much about landscape, do you think you're a distinctly Australian artist, or do the works that you make, are they distinctly Australian? And she said, no, not at all. I don't think I make particularly Australian works. And she said, for me, it's not so much light or the distinctive colour of the Australian landscape, but it's kind of the rhythm of life that's lived on that. And that might mean going for a walk and seeing the dog, an electric pole, or it might mean how the landscape changes with the seasons. They're kind of semi-abstract, and they invite reading, which brings back both landscape and human elements into that landscape. They're not colour-filled paintings that are about formal qualities of art and those kind of things. There's always a presence in those semi-abstract paintings of both the landscape and her, or other human interaction in that landscape.
We look at them and we think, gee, they're good, like they're happy, When I say they're good, I mean I'm hoping someone else will say, gee, I'm happy, because that's what it's about. It's not about me now. It's about someone looking at them on the wall and saying, gosh, they make me really happy. I want to go and do some gardening or something. I can't paint, but I can do this or that. Or I can go out with my camera, because she did. I wouldn't try and suggest that they even think of them as paintings, but thinking them of a person's personal journey to parallel, hopefully, what they will leave the gallery and want to do themselves. You don't have to be an artist or a painter or a sculptor. You just have to find a mechanism to reflect the creative part of your journey through life.